Hey tribe, Shia here from Florida, and I was going to discuss a piece about dating that's good to know and be aware of. So, we know about the hookup culture, and we know about how even certain dating apps, like I think, um, oh, I'm forgetting the name of the one that Tinder, I guess, got kind of a reputation, especially at first, around just being about hookups. And then also, like Field, Feeld, is another dating app that's kind of like for alternative BDSM people and open relationship people and swingers, and but also just people that I guess are more open-minded maybe, and are looking for partners to practice tantra or practice their BDSM or whatever, right? So one thing I've noticed is that sometimes what I don't like about those sites is that then it gets the two people talking about sex right away before they've actually laid any kind of a foundation of the relationship aside from that. Because if you're going to build a relationship solely on sexual, then it's going to be limited and it's kind of imbalanced. And so I find that it does kind of skew things a little bit weird in that it's almost forcing, I'm going to say, just as an example, it forcing the woman to talk about sex maybe sooner than she naturally would or is comfortable with. And it's like, well, we're just getting to know each other. Like, are you skipping steps? Because what I'm finding is that in my own life, I'm having to say, hey, we can play and talk about all this, because that's part of the process of getting to know each other too, as long as it's not just solely about that, but you're actually getting to know like other things too, like your interests and values, and maybe your dreams, and just seeing where you intersect in other parts of life. So I found myself this week saying, it's okay to talk about these things and play around with it, but just know that this comes, actually playing out these things doesn't come until later in the relationship, after we've deemed it, or I've deemed it, let's just say, I'll speak for myself, after we've established a relationship and a connection first, where we're getting to know each other now. And so I find that if I don't do that, then they just tend to automatically think that that's what we're doing on our next date. And I only had one date with them so far. So that's why, in this particular case, I had to say, oh, it's fun to talk about all this and play around and stuff, but just so you know, I need to establish and acknowledge that this isn't going to happen until we've established a connection in our relationship first, because I don't just jump to sex and do that with someone I don't really know, and we haven't sussed out certain things and had all the sex talks that set us up for success. And I could tell it kind of, this was in through texting, and I could tell it kind of took him aback because he got quiet. And of course, he came back around and said, oh, sorry, I am getting ahead of myself. I tend to get excited with new connections, and yes, it's all about enjoying the journey on the way there. So anyway, this is just, I guess this message is mostly for women, because I think guys can just jump in right away. They have that light switcher that, their testosterone allows them to jump in faster. And it's usually the woman that suffers in that case most of the time, because it takes a lot of skill sets to navigate sexuality, which, whether you want to admit it or not, is a deep sacred experience, and it was meant to be that way. um, at least if you want it to be a meaningful, more of a meaningful experience, which is, as a tantric priestess, that's how I approach it. So, if you tend to be both very highly sexual types and you're okay with just jumping in, then good for you. I'm speaking, I guess, to the majority of people who, maybe want to exert some care around who they're choosing. Because if you choose too quickly and jump in and then you find out things about them later, then you feel kind of like an idiot for going that far with someone that you really didn't know. And it does take time to get to know someone and even discuss all these things and have fun discussing all these things about what you like, what you don't like, and everything. Because then by the time you get there, you're really well versed in each other's likes and dislikes and what you're interested in exploring and so forth. And so it was kind of cool for me to be like, oh, yeah, it's easy for me to go there and talk about this with you because I happen to meet this person on field. But I don't want to give you the impression that we're going to be doing this like immediately or on our next date just because we're talking about it, because we haven't had enough quality time together or just spent enough time together to establish a connection that then the sexuality is a natural outpouring of that connection. If you're going into the connection and it's solely a sexual connection or an attractiveness, physical connection only, then it will fizzle out and die just as quickly because you haven't established a friendship first, a connection first. Maybe you both are into fitness and at least you have that in common and you like doing activities, and exercising out in nature together. And you'll always have that, whether the sexual part of it is there or not. So I guess that would be my advice as a relationship coach, especially for women, because oftentimes if you're not allowing the man to kind of prove himself that he's earned the right to be there in a sexual context with you, he can tend to take it for granted pretty easily. He can drop you just as quickly as he's, added you to his life. There's nothing else to keep it really alive if he hasn't had to invest in the relationship and invest in you. Then he has more of an investment to want to keep it going. But if he's just wanting to jump in, then you're just kind of more like a flavor of the week or something that, if I were to be honest, is kind of like getting to have a prostitute without having to pay for her. So we have to just be really wise about these things, because that's kind of what it turns out being a lot of times. And then the woman ends up feeling devastated. And the guy, because he's ghosted and blocked her, I guess, after, never hears about how he burned a bridge and really devastated someone. And that's, really bad karma to be creating that. And that's why women are, I think, a lot more gun shy about men in general. And it just makes it harder for other men to approach us because, we've had these experiences like that are just shocking, frankly. So anyway, that's my 2 bits for today as far as, and I also feel inspired. I want to inspire the men too. I know a lot of times you're told that you should just take every opportunity for sex that you can, that you should just take it while you got it, that, if you have an opportunity, go for it, whether you really like her or not. I think you're kind of told that message. And maybe that's truly how you feel as well. But, you might want to start thinking about, well, is that how I really think about it? Or do I actually want to be a little selective about who I engage energies with, who I am putting my sacredness into? Because there is an exchange that happens there energetically. You're mixing with the history of that person. You are intermingling with energies that, how do you know she's not a drug addict? Or, an alcoholic, or, have a lot of drama there that maybe you don't really want to be a part of, if you had just taken the time to really get to know her to see if this is something you want to, invest your sacredness into. Something to think about.